Hello, everybody. Welcome back to State of the Art, a live stream show brought to you by yours truly, Mainstream Media LLC, located right here in Chicago, Illinois. My name is Shelby McClain, your host. I'm back. And on the show, you will experience live streaming insights, production tips, social strategies, and deep dives on various topics. We also like to use the show to use different technology and platforms so that we could showcase them in your projects. Make sure they're all good to go. I am so excited about today's show. We're going to talk about our top picks for 2019. And right here with me, we have Nick Bacon, our managing director here in Chicago. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be joining you on this lovely sunny day in Chicago. It's great to be back in a town that I lived in for so long and that I really love.
Yes, I'm so excited too, because we rarely get to see you, just virtually.
I mean, we see each other all the time,
right?
Just through the computer.
Through the computer.
Through the computer.
Small computer. It's not enough.
It's not nearly enough. I feel the same way.
Yep. Okay, good.
Yeah.
But I'm so excited that you're here because I want to talk about our favorite projects that we've done, and also kind of a key question: what are the, even though we had fun, but what are the challenges that we had to overcome?
Yeah.
With those projects.
Definitely.
So why don't we kind of get into that? Like, how has 2019 year, like the year have been for you and some of the challenges?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that this year has been really interesting and challenging for me on a personal level, challenging in a good way. My wife and I had a baby at the end of last year, Ari. He's now a little over a year old. If he's watching, hi Ari. He probably isn't watching, but that's okay. But so I guess the challenge that I've experienced is like learning how to be a dad to like a human child that requires all sorts of stuff, it turns out, and how to manage a business at the same time, and then just to like add on additional complications, my wife and I decided to move back to Virginia, where we're from and where our families are from, because we wanted, that kind of family support and to raise Ari in an environment around his family. So that has really changed kind of the nature of our relationship and the relationship of me to Mainstream, where I'm now more or less fully remote. I'm also growing the business in Virginia, and that was kind of always part of the plan, was to open up a second, an East Coast agency, or an East Coast, like a satellite office. But yeah, I think it's been it's been a real challenge learning how to balance, family life, growing a family with also growing a business. But I think the way that I've been able to overcome that is, first of all, just by trusting you guys. We've all worked together really closely over the last few years, and I think working in live events and live streaming and video production especially can be a very stressful environment, and stress really kind of breeds trust. It shows who you can trust in those really tough situations. So I knew when we made that transition that we were going to be okay, because I trust you guys and you guys do great work, and we all and we've figured out how to communicate across distances to kind of close down that distance. So it's definitely a struggle. It's definitely something that we're still kind of learning, but we're figuring it out, and so I never lost faith or anything like that.
I feel special.
You should.
No, we're always about communication here at Mainstream, and I think we do really well at keeping each other up to date, especially with our Monday morning meetings.
Yeah,
That's a tongue twister.
That's been huge. The kind of Monday morning. So for those not on the Mainstream team, every Monday we start our week with a production meeting where we go over all of the shows that are coming up for the week. We make sure that everyone understands what their assignments are, what gear needs to be where, and we're pretty efficient at these meetings. It sounds like it could be like an all-day kind of thing, but we get it down to about 60, 75 minutes, and they're fun. I mean, we kind of we catch up with each other, but they're efficient, and I think that we really focus on relaying the most critical information at that time, just to make sure that we all have the most critical information that we need to like succeed at our jobs.
Exactly.
So, and it's great to like see all your lovely faces to kick off the week.
Oh yeah. No, I definitely appreciate that. And I think also with you being remote, this goes to my biggest challenge was for you to have access to the media that we have here. You know, for 2019, we have over 20 terabytes worth of footage.
That's a lot of gigs.
It's a lot of gigs, a lot of projects,
A lot of gigs and a lot of gigs. A lot of gigs for those gigs.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
That was great. I like that. Yeah, so there was a lot of gigs. I can't do it as well as you do. And so I just thought, like, okay, you need access to that. So just in case we do have some shared post-production or you want to share it with some of your clients, you know, in Virginia, instead of using the Google Drive as our number one, I wanted to set up the NAS system, the network attached storage, so that you can have access remotely. And that we have access in the office on the network too. It's not like, oh, let me go to this specific computer and transfer files.
Or find this specific hard drive.
Exactly. It's all there. You know, if we're done with a gig and you just want to go straight home and dump footage, like you can do that, or on the site.
Yeah.
You can do that as well. So that was a challenge because I didn't know a lot about it. And so me just kind of researching for a few months and setting it up and testing it, I think it's working really well.
Yeah, for sure. So. And I remember we also talked to Tim Whalen at Bigfoot Media, remember, who runs a video production company here in Chicago, and he was really helpful kind of explaining what they do and stuff like that. They have a similar amount of data to us. But do you remember when we were kind of first talking, like why we decided, because we use G Drive, the Google Drive, for a lot of stuff. So why did we decide to use basically set up our own cloud rather than use one of the kind of like consumer clouds?
Exactly. I think the main reason is because it takes a lot of time to upload camera files and line cuts. You know, sometimes these projects are like these live streams are like an hour, or conferences that range for 2 days. So it takes a lot of upload time, a lot of download time, and processing time. Because even if you upload it on Google Drive, it'll take a while to process to be able to view on Google. So we still use it though as our third safety net. Yeah,
to like share project files, smaller project files, or like client, or things with clients. It's very easy to do that. Exactly. But yeah, the way the NAS works, we can upload files here, and even if they're big files, it's uploading kind of at the same rate as you would upload like just from a normal hard drive, because it's here, you know, the server is here. When you download it, you still have that kind of bandwidth limitation because it's going over the public internet. But basically, it allows us to upload things very quickly here, but then access it anywhere.
Right.
So that's great, and it's been really helpful for me in Virginia to be able to pull down project files or upload the stuff that I'm shooting, the projects that I'm working on, and know that it's getting to a safe place. And then you have another backup system as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So the main source of the archive is the NAS. And then the second is I want to have a second copy on just like a local drive. And then our third is Google.
Right.
Have it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That was a crazy complicated project. And it's like, it's tough to figure that. I mean, we're still like a small agency. There's 7 of us. I think, right? 7? Yeah. I always count after 3, but it's so, you know, taking on these kind of big internal projects can be challenging because we still have all of the normal work that we do.
Exactly.
And then so I'm really proud of how you were able to pull that project together. I know it took a long time. I know you had to learn a lot along the way, but you were able to balance that with, you know, continuing to do all of the other work that you had assigned, and so that was great.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Yes, I think it's working out very well. And speaking of projects, I cannot wait to show everybody the projects, our top picks that we're going to talk about for our deep dive today. So everybody, get ready. Connor from our team and Katelyn are going to come after this teaser to share their top picks and Nick's top pick for 2019. We'll be right back.
Competition brings out the growth in all of us. And I think there's no better way to sort of personify the power of this event.
Good evening and welcome to Miss Grand USA 2019.
I know where you're coming from. A long road and the money's gone. All the games where you played your part from the very start.
Waist up shot.
Our enthusiasm and innovation has topped a new level with our first worldwide virtual launch of our new natural clean clinical skincare collection.
Welcome back to State of the Art, the live show that Mainstream produces about live streaming and various other things. And since and if you missed it, Angela just yelled at me because I had a bottle of water on the table, and I'm not allowed to do that. So I'm sorry, Angela. Joining me today for this conversation, where we're talking about some of the biggest projects or some of the exciting projects that we worked on over the year. We have Katelyn Douglas, our production coordinator, and Connor Davis, our associate technical director. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. And I think for both of you, this is your first time in front of the camera on State of the Art, right?
It's
Totally
true.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, long time viewer, first time talker.
Yeah.
Right on.
Long time switcher.
Yes.
Yeah.
First time on this side.
Yeah, that's right. Connor, you're normally cutting the show.
Yep.
Katelyn, you're normally doing all of the
Helping,
other
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So it's cool to be on, and also I am very rarely on this show as well. So we're just throwing everything new at it, and we're just going to see how it goes, which is great. So today we're talking about some of the big projects that we worked on. And specifically, we want to talk about challenges that we faced and how we overcame them. So why don't we start, Katelyn, we can start with you. You can tell us a little bit about the project that you chose.
Yeah. So we had a very exciting stream this year with Image Skincare, a big big skincare brand. This one was unique because it was sort of a hybrid event of a stream within a larger event. They wanted to be able to showcase their brand new products launch in Chicago, invite people to come test the products, and also share a whole show pretty much with their worldwide audience. Mm-hmm. So it was really unique to be able to find our way in this larger event and how we fit and how to achieve their goals that way. So yeah, I think it was my favorite thing we did this year.
Right on.
Personally, yeah.
What's something that you learned during that show?
The biggest thing I learned was, like I was saying, how we fit into a larger event.
Mm-hmm.
They had goals larger than the stream, but the stream was still a very important part of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So figuring out how we fit, schedule-wise, spatially, how we fit with all the vendors, where each element is super important,
Mm-hmm.
and being flexible within that way.
Yeah, right on. Very cool. Connor, what about you? What was your big show of the year?
The big show of the year was Miss Grand 2019.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
It was a beauty pageant held in Chicago. We had a 5-camera shoot, I think 9 people on the crew. It was a big one. It had its challenges, but at the end of the day, I think we made a great show, which is super exciting. It was a 2-day show with a day of setup,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, we had a really strong team, which really helped make a great show on that.
Right on. And what's something that you learned during that show?
I learned that organization is just about everything, as well as knowing your technical flow and how to adjust accordingly.
Right on. That's cool. Well, we're definitely going to talk a lot more about technical flows and the complexities of shows and all of that stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. The show that I want to talk about is the show that we did with Marriott International. So Marriott every year, or for the last few years, has produced an internal event called Masters of the Craft. And it is a cooking competition, cooking/mixology competition, featuring the best chefs and mixologists at Marriott properties around the country. And so over the year, they compete regionally. They are judged by professional judges. And then at the end of the year, they choose the best, the folks who have won, and then they compete to be named the master of their craft, right? So it's been, it was a super cool experience working with a huge brand like that to produce this 2-hour like Food Network-like cooking show. And the thing that I learned was I learned how to use LinkedIn Live for that broadcast. At the end of the day, the purpose of that broadcast was to, it was kind of like a hiring event. They wanted to reach a wide audience. They want to attract the best talent in the world. And so we came up with the idea to produce it on LinkedIn Live, which is still a beta platform, so it was a little bit risky. But we decided to do that because that's a place where hiring happens, and so it just kind of organically made sense with the event. So did a lot of work with LinkedIn prior to figure out all the ins and outs, and I think we ended up with a great show, with a really successful show.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
great.
it was a blast, and that was like our first big DC Virginia show. So it was exciting for me to like kind of get that up and running on the East Coast.
Nice.
So let's talk about the challenges that we experienced and then how we overcame them. So Katelyn, tell me a little bit about a challenge that you faced and how you overcame it.
Sure. I think our biggest challenge was, like I was saying before, how we fit within this larger event. And I think the biggest part of that was finding the best schedule for us. We were lucky enough to be able to go into this space like a day before, set everything up, have a little bit of a run through. We still wanted to find more time to have a rehearsal, because the really cool thing about this event was the people on screen, the talent was actually employees of the brand.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was a big important thing for them to show the people who make the stuff, the people who use the stuff and sell the stuff. So having them there to kind of run through it and working with them on this large event, that was really important to them, but being flexible enough to find a way to run them through this whole show we were about to do within that. You run into obstacles of people coming in and needing the space when you thought you were going to have the space, or this cord doesn't work, but we have to go over here. And just, it really helps to have a good team who has gone on so many events like this.
Yeah.
There's always something new. So yeah, that was the biggest way, the only way to overcome stuff like that is to have people who've done it a million times and can kind of roll with it and make it happen.
Yeah,
She was a big part of that too.
Right. Chicago is the city of improv, right? And so
Indeed.
like there's kind of almost that mentality baked in with any crew that you work with in Chicago. It's just like stuff comes up and then you got to be able to roll with it and just like keep the production going.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
100%.
Right on. Connor, what about you? What was like a challenge that you experienced and how did you overcome it?
Man, besides just the straight up complexity of the show, a actual issue that we had was on the first day of setup, our switcher broke. And if you don't know what a switcher is, it's basically the brains of the operation. It handles all the switching and pulling all your feeds and making a show out of it. So it's a very, very important part of the signal flow.
Yeah.
And we started running a firmware update on it, and I didn't realize we were doing that, and I was just trying to see if we had feeds, and I was pressing buttons, and it all broke. So we lost the brains of our operations.
Yeah.
And thankfully we had a comparable piece back at the office that we could swap in, but on top of that, turns out like 4 other people on the crew had access to that specific piece. So being able to understand what went wrong and what part of the signal flow needed to be switched out in order to continue along with making the show, being able to swap out that piece when it broke really saved the entire production.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think from a technical perspective, you really need to understand the entire signal flow for when something like that happens. You have to figure out how to swap it in, right? Like, because you ended up swapping in not the exact same model, right? But Correct. It was a different model. So did that like change the signal flow at all, or?
So there were a couple small differences, but in the overall scheme of things, even though we were using a different piece of gear, pretty much everything stayed the same. We were using the back-end software of the ATEM controller, so that stayed the same, so controlling the whole system was the same. But actually just physically getting all the inputs into the different spots and rearranging that to fit the schematic that we had set up before was the challenge, but we made it through, and we couldn't even tell it happened. So.
Nobody was any the wiser.
Until now.
Until now. Sorry, Miss Grand, but it was a great show.
Yeah.
And we were ready for it. Yeah. So for me, the Marriott project, the challenge that I experienced, and I think Katelyn, like you experienced this as well, working with Image Skincare, was just the amount of people and access to the space, right? So the stream that we were producing was at Marriott headquarters, where there are hundreds or thousands of employees, and it's just a space that is in constant use, and it's like every square foot of that space is in constant use, right? So when we're coming in, we are doing a big stream, and it's like the most important stream that we're doing, and and we're reaching all these people, and it's great. But to the vast majority of the employees at that building, it's just another Tuesday, right? It's just like another day, and so we have to be super mindful of them. To not like disrupt their day in a way that like can really have a kind of ripple effect, while still making sure that we're producing like the best show possible, right? So that was a real big challenge for us, and I think the way that we overcame that was just through a lot of pre-planning and just making sure that we really understood like where our cameras were going to be and when we were going to get access to spaces. I mean, for that event, we had 3 different locations that we were in, which were like beautiful locations. There was a test kitchen, there was a bar studio that's used very often for video shoots, internal, external, and stuff like that. And there was a cafeteria as well. So we really had to understand like what the traffic was like in those areas and understand when we could get access, when we couldn't get access, and what we could accomplish within the time frame that we had access to those spaces. So there was a lot of conversations about like what are the most critical things that we need to get set up first in order for this event to happen and look the way it's supposed to, and then from there, what are all of the other things that we want to add to make the show even better, but may not be as necessarily critical to the event, right? So like I said, lots of pre-planning went into that, and prioritization, I think, of the various like equipment and crew and services that we were providing. Luckily, we had a lot of time. They gave us probably 4 or 5 months heads up, so we were able
That
to,
helps.
yeah. So that was dope.
Yeah.
So what's one thing that you guys did to set yourself up for success? Like when you just started working on the project, what did you do to make sure that the project was going to go off successfully?
Yeah. For Image Skincare, they came in with a lot of really fun ideas about how they could do their first ever product launch in a live way. So to set it up for success for both of us, I thought it would be really important to lay out, kind of like what you're saying, what is the most important thing that you want to get across with this, and how do we fit that into the space and time that we have. So I shared with them, some past streams we had done, some past scripts we had created, and from that we kind of went through and helped them write a script and helped them find a run of show that could do all of their goals, show their product, finding the right camera that could show the product that they want to show, and really just making their goal happen in the time and limited space we had.
Yeah. For both of you, we're talking about cameras. You guys used the FS7 for Image Skincare. And Connor, you ended up using a bunch of FS7s.
Yeah, like 6 of them.
Right. And do you remember the rationale for that, like why we decided to use those cameras?
They're very high quality cameras. We're pretty used to them too at this point, which is nice. The color on them is fantastic, and having matching cameras makes all the difference in the world. It can really help take a production to the next level of professionalism that we're looking for.
For sure, yeah, definitely. So what did you do to kind of set your show up for success?
So personally, I'm not a huge watcher of beauty pageants, so I had to figure that out first to get into YouTube and see some of the old Miss Americas, and there are a lot of Filipino beauty pageants that they have going on, so that was a great source of high quality production that I could try to pull some ideas from and try to emulate. So a lot of research and then a lot of just pre-production and getting the right pieces in place and working with the team and working with Brian to make this thing come alive.
Yeah. So what were some ideas that you pulled from, like in your research, what were some ideas that you pulled to kind of make this feel like or seem like or just be like the best show possible?
One thing that I noticed predominantly with all the other shows I was watching was just how much motion they were using in all their shots. They had sliders, they had jibs, they had servo lenses, they could zoom, and my goal was to get our hands on all of those things and use them to the best of their abilities. So we ended up having one huge, I think 20-foot jib, 2 5-foot sliders, and then 2 more locked down in the back for just kind of zooming and close-ups and that type of variety of shot. So having that variety and having like good, capable operators on it was really helpful in figuring that out. And also, before any of that is figuring out what cameras we want and where, and being able to kind of map that out and develop it and consult the rest of the team to figure out what is going to be the best way to cover this was incredibly helpful.
Yeah, and you ended up, you were working with Brian on that project, and you all ended up deciding on the FS7, which is, I think it's the right camera to use for something like that. Like, it creates a beautiful image, it renders skin tone really, really well. But there's like a give and take there, right? Because some of the limitations of FS7s, as opposed to the cameras that we normally use, the ENG kind of camcorders, is that they just don't have servo zooms necessarily, right? So like your framing is, you kind of have to think about the composition differently, whereas if you have a camera that has a 20x zoom, 25x, 50x, whatever, you can kind of just slap it down anywhere, and then like you're pretty sure you're going to get the shot.
You can probably get whatever you need.
Yeah, exactly. But so, did you guys have a lot more conversations about kind of camera placement and things like that?
Definitely. The actual placements of the camera were incredibly important. We ended up putting kind of in like a star type grid. On the left was the jib, on the right and the tip of the star were the sliders, and then way in the back we had the two cameras on sticks. So being able to, there were a couple moments in the show that on each walk we know we wanted to capture. It was coming out onto the catwalk and then leaving the catwalk. So we had a shot capturing them coming on initially, and then we had the jib kind of swinging and walk with them as they went down the stage, and then we had a slider that would follow them off as well, which kept all the motion moving really nicely. I think created a really awesome picture.
Yeah, for sure. Katelyn, you guys used like a ton of cameras as well, and you used the FS7, which again feels like the right choice for what y'all were doing. But what was it like when you're thinking about like camera placement or just kind of setup? What decisions were you making knowing that you had to work around all these other people?
Yeah, it was really important for the client to show movement as well, but in a sort of a different way. They had different stations in the event of people trying product. So we knew we needed a camera that we could move with. We had a few people, moving it remotely. And then also they wanted to show the product, which was this brand new thing. So we need to have a camera that could show, skin tone really well, like you were saying, and what it looks like in real time.
Yeah, for sure. During the Marriott shoot, so I because I was in Virginia and had less access to the gear there, I had to make a different decision, which was that like we needed a bunch of cameras, right? Because we had so many different locations. But I just kind of had to grab the cameras that were available. And so we had 6 cameras and maybe 7 cameras, and every single one was a different camera. We had an FS7, a FS7 Mark II, an FS5 II, a GH5, a Sony A6500, the Sony Z190. We brought a PTZ, the bird dog P200 out for whatever reason. That didn't make the cut, but it could have. And so, but you know, it was kind of just like it was more important to have a bunch of cameras to cover everything than it was to have matching cameras. And we were able to get away with it, I think, because we were in so many different locations. Right. You know, so like so long as the cameras that are in a location are matched together, then that feels okay.
Definitely.
So we were able to kind of cheat it a little bit. That said, and the other way that we got around it is we had like a really knowledgeable crew. We partnered with a company called DC Visionaries to provide camera operation and some of the camera equipment. So they were extraordinarily helpful and very knowledgeable about how to run all of that. And like they had a level of knowledge about like how to match an A6500 to a GH5S, which definitely went beyond like what I knew. So it was really great just like having camera nerds on set and being like, it needs more magenta. And be like, yeah, yes, I am familiar with the color magenta. So that was really cool. I think if I were to approach that project again, I would look at the camera choices that we made and figure out ways to get them all, just to get matching cameras, because at the end of the day, that just makes everybody's job a lot easier, for sure.
Certainly.
What was something that was unexpected that happened on set? Connor, maybe we start with you. Something that caught you by surprise.
I feel like I jumped the gun on that with the ATEM because that was certainly surprising. One thing that surprised me in the show that I hadn't really considered until we were actually going was the pace that they were going. It was an incredibly fast show, and they were going from section to section very quickly with very little break in between, except for tabulating the judges' votes. That took some time. But besides that, the rest of the show really kept a really vigorous pace. So keeping up with that and keeping everybody, making sure that all the camera people know what assignment that they're supposed to be covering at this point that was a big challenge.
Yeah, and I mean during that show you had, how many? It was like 30 something.
I think it was 38 contestants.
38 contestants, and they're all kind of going through the same choreography, right? And you have 5 different cameras to choose from, so you're like, I mean, you just multiply that out. How many decisions are you making in a 10-second or 10-minute window? You know,
it's quite
wild.
a few.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a super intense show, especially because they had different types of sections. So they would start off with a big choreographed number, which took up the entire stage and was massive and just a whole thing. And that was a lot of trying to show how large of a group it is and seeing them all in sync and kind of trying to showcase specific people, but also just showing how big and crazy that opening number was.
Yeah.
And then right after that, they go into individual walks, which are all very choreographed, and they all do the same path every time. So once we got into that flow, we all knew exactly what everyone's responsibility was.
Yeah.
So bouncing between those and keeping it all loose was really important.
Yeah, right on. And Katelyn, I'm going to ask you the same question, but I see we have some questions coming in. Anthony and Ryan, thank you for your questions. We're going to get to them in a little bit, so just stay with us for sure, okay? So Katelyn, something unexpected that happened for you on your shoot.
Yeah. One thing that happened right at the start of the project, they had found a really great space to do this event. And when we went for our site survey to test everything out, we realized there wasn't really an internet connection that we could use for streaming. You know, we need a really strong hardline internet connection, which didn't exist, which kind of threw a wrench in their plan and our plan. So to overcome that, we had to work with the venue manager, which took some time. You had to go through a few people. Luckily for us and them, they could just bump up their current internet for like the week we were there. Sometimes we don't get that lucky. Sometimes we have to figure it out in other ways if we don't have enough time to do that. But yeah.
Yeah, and that space was unique because really it was, I mean, they found it on like Airbnb, I think, right? Or VRBO, something like that. So it was really just kind of someone's house, but it was someone's house who had really been built out for production. So, you know, the internet that they had was kind of just like home, you know, internet Comcast or whatever. And when that's the case, like, it's pretty straightforward to just bump up your internet. If this were at like a business, if there were a business line or at a hotel or something like that, a lot more hoops that you have to jump through, right? It can be a lot more complicated to get internet. And so luckily, I mean, we started working with ESP on this event, months in advance, right? So that was one of the first things that you figured out.
Yeah, very first.
Yeah, you show up and like where is the internet? Everyone's like, what is internet? Right on. So something that was unexpected for me at Marriott, I think was just like we work with a lot of organizations of all different shapes and sizes. Marriott is one of the larger, if not the largest, that we've worked with. And when you work in an organization like that, there is a lot of specialization, right? You know, at Mainstream, when you have 7 folks, like you wear a lot of hats. At Marriott, it does not make sense to have people who wear a lot of hats, right? So, it was a little unexpected. In hindsight, it's obvious, right? It's always the case. But like, just how many different people we had to talk to for all sorts of different things. There's the social media team, there's an AV coordinator, there's the venue coordinator, there's HR, there's the folks who have access to Facebook versus the folks who have access to LinkedIn. And so there were just so many different people to talk to for every single decision. And like Marriott was really good about putting the right person in touch with us, like our main point. We had one kind of main point person, Hannah, and she was great at saying like, you need to talk to this person, that person, whatever. But that was a little bit unexpected, and I think the way that we overcame that was very early on. And this was again, like we kind of booked this project 4 or 5 months before the actual event. So we had a lot of time to like have these conversations. So leading up to the event, I just had like dozens of conversations with all sorts of different people, like with the AV coordinators, with the building managers, security, the dock supervisors, like just everyone that I thought may need to provide me with an answer, a critical answer at a critical moment. Leading up to the event, so that by the time the event came in and we were like in that space for 2 days, I knew everyone. They had at least seen my face or talked to me a couple of times, and when an issue came up, I knew who it was I needed to talk to like get it fixed right away. So I'm really glad that we had all of that time to have those conversations, and like it was really nice working with all those Marriott people. They're like so friendly and so great.
Nice.
So I think we've kind of been a little bit high level now. I want to get more nitty gritty. And so from a kind of technical point of view, Connor, I want to talk to you about graphics, right? Broadly, graphics is a challenge that we've been working on this year to like figure out the best workflow for graphics. Before this year, we were, and before we had like invested in the ATEM, we were almost entirely like software based. And so a lot of the graphics that we did was through Wirecast or a similar program. That was also where we were doing a lot of the switching. That was kind of, our all-in-one solution. And so while that gave us a lot of possibility, it does not provide for a lot of redundancy for like backups, right? And so once we kind of had that conversation, we were like, we really need to have backup plans to the backup plans and have redundancy and like figure out how to like solve all of these little pieces independently. That's when we started breaking things away from Wirecast and kind of building in switchers and graphics machines and all that stuff. So talk to me a little bit about like our graphics evolution over the year, where we started, how working at Miss Grand, like what happened there, and then where we're at now.
For sure. So at the beginning of the year, we primarily ran all of our graphics through Wirecast, just on a layer above, which works really nicely, but like you said, has zero redundancy, and if Wirecast crashes, then everything crashes. Right. So we started, like you said, breaking out into different pieces. For Miss Grand, we figured out a flow where we ran a laptop into a PCIe chassis that had a DeckLink Duo in it, which is a
capture card.
It's a capture card.
Yeah.
And it is also able to do outputs through that card. So we ran OBS, which is a free broadcasting software, ran our graphics through there, pushed it out of the PCIe chassis graphics card into the ATEM to do upstream key graphics, which bake them straight into our live production, which is great, and also gives us a point of failure that we can switch out pieces in case something were to go wrong. And thankfully on that one, it didn't. And then we continued the evolution of that now into working with vMix as our graphic generation machine instead of, or graphic generation software instead of OBS. It's a little bit more reliable.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we're running into weird key fill issues with OBS a few months ago, where the fill was like one frame before the key, or vice versa.
Which created a weird kind of shadowed
graphics.
Not a good look.
Yeah.
So we moved past that.
We've moved past that, and I think vMix as a graphics dedicated system has been pretty good. I know that Katelyn, you've run graphics on a couple jobs. Were you doing it on? Were you doing it on Image Skincare?
I was helping. Yeah, I actually did run those graphics.
Totally ran it.
I did.
That's awesome.
And for Miss Grand as well. It was you and Erica together.
That's true.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
A lot of names.
A lot of contestants. A lot of names. And yeah, so that's great. I mean, it's definitely been an evolution, and I wouldn't say that we are 100% decided right now on like, I think there are still places where we can like continue to improve, but where we are now is definitely a lot more secure and reliable than where we were a year ago.
Absolutely.
And the great thing is, if vMix goes down or whatever, the entire system doesn't go down because we're still switching. We still have still stores in the ATEM, so we can still drop in, still graphics and things like that. So we still have a broadcast even if part of the system goes down, which it hasn't yet, which is great. So that's cool, and we'll continue to kind of like explore that and add little pieces. I know that we got a couple of Stream Decks recently, so we'll be able to control graphics with the Stream Deck. So that'll be good. Katelyn, I want to talk to you about the kind of like question of a hybrid event, right? So this is like a question that we get pretty often, is people want to know, why should I do a live stream when I'm hosting a live event, right? Like, aren't people just going to stay home and watch the live stream versus like coming and like being at my space? Yeah. So Image Skincare is like a great example of an event that was hybrid. It was designed from the very beginning to be both physical and virtual. So talk to me about like that process. How did we get kind of to that point, and was it successful for them?
Yeah, it was very successful for them because they have such a large audience, not only in Chicago but worldwide, really. They did it in Chicago because they have a lot of skincare professionals here who they sell to. So they wanted to have it here, to have it open for them to come. They wanted to bring in the people that they know follow them on their social platforms who are in Chicago. So they made that available for them. But also, this was a brand new product that they knew a lot of people were really excited for, that they've been kind of teasing for a while. And the only way to get those people into like a live event to like see the product for the first time, see how it looks, see how it feels, was to do a stream. So it's kind of like, if you can't come to the event in Chicago and walk around this fun place, you can come with us virtually. So yeah, it was really great. I think they're really happy with the amount of people who were able to watch it outside of Chicago.
For sure. And yeah, I mean, I think just building on that, there are a lot of like benefits that you get from physically attending an event, right? And there's a lot of people who are interested in that, right? It's not just about experiencing the event, but it's about meeting people there, right? Networking, getting your hands on products, or being able to talk to experts about the things that are there and ask questions and kind of have conversations. Some people just learn better that way. But there's also a huge swath of the population for which that is just not interesting, right? Like, and as an introvert myself, I relate to this, where a lot of times I want to go to an event, but I don't want to be in a room with 200 people, right? That can be really overwhelming. So I think that what I have seen is virtual events, live streaming works really well for folks, where to tap into this audience who may not have an interest in going to a physical event because of either geographical restrictions, they're not in Chicago, they can't show up to the product launch, or just for personal reasons, they just don't want to be in a room with that many people. They feel uncomfortable, or they can't, or they like physically, they can't find a babysitter that night, right? Like,
it's too cold.
Or it's too cold, or like, there's a new episode of Game, or like whatever.
Yeah. Got a new dog and you can't get out.
Got a new dog and you can't get out.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. I can relate to that. So yeah, I mean, I think that's really something that we've experienced, is that like hybrid events allow you to tap into an audience that would otherwise not be at your event. It's not taking an audience away from your physical event, at least in the, I don't know, like 400 events that I've worked on in the last couple of years, that I haven't experienced that.
Yeah.
So, well, this has been a really great conversation, and I feel like, we could talk about this forever, but we're not going to. We're going to roll a couple, so after this, we're going to take a couple of your questions, or we're going to go through as many questions as you guys have for us. But before that, we're going to take a look at some interviews that have happened with some of our other Mainstream crew members who have been on set and have hopped on camera to talk about Mainstream, talk about live streaming, and talk about what we do. So take a look, and when we come back, we'll answer some questions.
Okay, moms, we have a lot of tips for him, but what's cool about you is that we all know this man because we were doing hip-hop dancing yesterday. You know Chance the Rapper, right?
So our company does do work with Chance the Rapper. Yeah, we do a broadcast for his non-for-profit social works.
Did you learn like the strawberry or the cabbage patch, or?
No, we just learn all about the great things that social works does.
He's terrified of me right now.
There's just a lot of mom vibes going on in the room here, so it's pretty great.
Like, ovaries twitching?
No, it's great.
We have a house manager, and she's really brilliant at folding sheets. Would you like to tell us, do you know how to fold a fitted sheet?
I don't know how to fold a fitted sheet. The truth is I only have one fitted sheet, and you take it off and then you wash it.
Let's go.
Okay, another one?
Your turn, you gotta do this.
I'll go rapid speed here.
You saw how to do it.
Okay, so in the corner.
You're taking the Big Mother House challenge instead of the 1 million laughs challenge, and that's how to fold a fitted sheet.
I want everyone at home to try it. Okay, so now I got this, and then.
All right.
Okay.
Let's cheer them on, moms.
All right.
Positive reinforcement.
Okay. And then there's no pressure, no pressure.
You got this. I'll tell you another trick.
How's it going?
And then you just kind of bulk it up and then just jam it in the cabinet and then you're good.
Or you shove it under the bed, or you put it wherever. Well, I'm excited that you're here, and I think it's really cool what you do with Mainstream Chicago.
So I'm here with Erica. You guys see all the winners coming in, but do you see the production behind? You don't. So Erica's a very hard worker behind the scenes. Can you tell us about your crew?
Thank you, Jeff. You know, I'm so excited. We're here with Mainstream Media and some students. We're behind the scenes. So basically, I'm floor directing, making sure all the guests come in nice and look beautiful. Make sure the camera shots are all nice and set. So we have 3 cameras out here. We have our wonderful control room, just controlling the shots and what the audience sees. And it's really fun. We want the show to look pristine. So we're all about quality production.
Thank you for all the work you guys are doing, and we'll be back with more winners after this break.
Awesome.
Welcome back to this very serious edition of State of the Art. We're here to answer all of your questions about live streaming, about the challenges that we've overcome. And so we're going to get into your questions now. First question I see coming in from Anthony. Anthony, hello, thank you for tuning in. Anthony's question is, do you do a local NAS to deliver content to the production computers without touching them? And I think that's a pretty good description of like how we use the NAS. The way we have it set up, it's basically like having one external hard drive plugged into all of our different computers, which actually, could we go to the Marshall cam real fast and just show the space? So like, we have a lot of computers, right? And you can see like in this room behind me is our kind of editing suite. We have the next computers over there. We have there are many computers. And so all of them have access to the NAS and can download things very quickly. Mm-hmm. So all of our machines can be used for editing or what have you, which is great.
Definitely.
So, and I think it's tied into like the 10 gig port, or at least it should be tied into the 10 gig port on our local router. Mm-hmm. So the download speeds are like very fast. It's basically like transferring straight from an SSD.
That's incredible.
Yeah, which is great. The next question comes from Ryan Brenneman up in Cumberland, Maryland. What's going on, Ryan? What did you use for your gimbal camera? Was it on a wire or a jib? And we were talking about this during the break, and I think we all kind of had different ways of dealing with our motion camera experiences. So for Marriott, our motion cameras were all on monopods because the spaces that we were in were pretty, there were like kind of a lot of small alleyways. Mm-hmm. We're in a test kitchen, right? So like in the test kitchen, it's hard to have a steady cam or like a full rig where where you can like move around and not just like cause a fire to erupt or like knock over someone's dish. Mm-hmm. So we needed to keep things kind of as small as possible there. We also had a lot of like fixed position stuff with that, right? So you kind of like move from here over to there, and that's your shot, and then you just like hold there. But I know Connor with Miss Grand, what were all the kind of camera rigs that you were using for that?
So the two basic ones, like we had 2 cameras on sticks, which are not super exciting, but we had 2 long bar sliders that would basically, I guess we can cut to that guy right in the middle there. That's a slider that we actually used on Miss Grand. So there it is. So we used this exact setup for Miss Grand, and then we had 2 of these, and we also had a jib that had a 20-foot arm that could sweep and fly through the whole area. So no actual gimbals, but massive sweeping things instead.
Yeah, for sure. Katelyn, you guys did use some gimbals on Image Skincare, right? What did you guys use?
Yeah, we had, I think, 2 operators with Steadicams. we had to move from each little setup we had pretty quickly, also through people who were there for the actual event. So we tried to take up the least amount of space we could, but keep that like smooth motion. It was important for the client to see their employees walking from station to station and be able to follow them.
Gotcha. And so, yeah, it's a little bit, it's almost more of a show at that point to have the full, like, kind of steady camera.
And also, like, show the audience. We also were able to show the camera operators on the stream because they wanted to show that the stream was happening. They weren't trying to hide that it was happening.
Right.
Additionally, the tripods that you were working with also had wheels on the bottom of them, so there were a lot of shifting those to the different stations that we were shooting.
Yeah.
It's like how you make a 3-camera shoot look like a 20-camera shoot.
Exactly.
You just move them around. Right on. Sam Mann has a question for Connor. Connor, what is your dream gig?
Oh,
wow.
Hello, Sam Mann. My dream gig, personally, would be to direct for the Olympics. I think that'd be really awesome. It's directing, it's sports, it's a bunch of different events within one thing. So on a personal standpoint, that's a long-term goal of mine.
That would be cool. Yeah. And I know that at least for the Winter Olympics last year, they did a lot of like remote productions.
Which is incredible.
Yeah, the Olympics is a place where there's so much technical complexity. You have so many different networks who all need access, who are all like in the pit together, and then all these signals are often being sent back to like broadcast studios around the world where that's where the actual like cutting is happening.
Everyone's the home team, so
everyone is exactly. That's so wild. Yeah, that would be cool. So I think it's NBC that has the rights to the Olympics. So if anyone at NBC is watching, we're here to help. If you guys need help, so let us know. Any particular sport?
Like curling is always a lot of fun. I think volleyball would be cool. There's a lot of back and forth in that. I used to wrestle a lot, so any sort of combat sports they have going on there would be great. So
maybe dodgeball makes its way into the Olympics.
That'd be a dream.
We're talking about it.
Yeah.
For real?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't realize
so
that.
Good.
That's
We're experienced. We can do it.
Yeah. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. John Shedler up in Boston, Massachusetts has a question. Hey, John, hope you're doing well. I see you're now streaming 1080p, which I didn't realize. That's very exciting. Do all pages now have native 1080p ingest support, or is it still being rolled out? I believe most people couldn't do 1080 without a special encoder. So I know that was the case for a while, and I believe that there was a rollout. I don't remember when that rollout happened, but it was within the last few months. I think it was when it was after NAB. It was when the creative studio thing kind of rolled out. So, Facebook limited people to 720p for a very long time, unless you had the Wowza Clearcaster encoder, which is basically a specialized rack mount encoder built by Wowza just to deliver 1080p signals to Facebook, as well as a few other things. It's a super cool encoder. But yeah, I believe back in like September or October, they opened up 1080p streaming to Facebook. So we're excited to see how or whether that changes things for us. So I think that's all the questions we have. If not, that's all the time we have. So sorry, guys and girls. But this has been our final episode of State of the Art for 2019, the last show of the decade. So thank you so much for coming along with us on this journey. Remember to stay up to date with what our team is streaming. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, just about anywhere. And you can also check out our website, www.mainstreamchicago.com, to learn more about us and to see portfolio pieces and case studies for the events that we've been working on. So happy streaming, and we'll see you in the next decade.